We'll be going over IRS Form 8992, U.S. Shareholder Calculation of Global Intangible Low-Taxed Income, otherwise known as GILTI. If you've never heard of this tax form before, that's because it's relatively new. It was created by the Internal Revenue Service as a response to a major change in the tax law from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. Basically, U.S. residents or U.S. citizens that are shareholders of foreign corporations must file this form if they own a partial interest in a controlled foreign corporation as defined by the tax code. So a controlled foreign corporation is a foreign company that is at least 50% owned by U.S. shareholders, either in terms of total shares outstanding or voting power. So the intent was to make sure that U.S. owners of companies don't export those companies offshore to countries where they would pay lower tax. So in order to kind of address that issue, the Internal Revenue Service created IRS Form 8992 to help people calculate whether or not their income is subject to being classified as global intangible low taxed income, and then being able to calculate the amount of additional income that they put on their tax return. So in this video, we'll be going over IRS Form 8992 itself. However, there are two schedules in this form that you need to complete to provide information for this form. So Schedule A is for any U.S. shareholder who is not a member of a U.S. consolidated group, you would use Schedule A, which is a much simpler tax form. Schedule B is for U.S. shareholders who are members of a U.S. consolidated group. So we will put out separate videos for completing both Schedule A and Schedule B, but for the purpose of this video, we're going to use numbers that we've already imported from those respective schedules. So there are two parts to this tax form, and it's only one page long. It's fairly straightforward. Most of the calculations come from either Schedule A or Schedule B, which you'll be completing offline, so to speak. And then you're simply putting in numbers and doing calculations based on the information in those forms. So at the top of the form, we're going to enter the name of the person in air quotes filing this return. Most likely it will be some sort of partnership or corporation. In this section over here under identifying number, if for some reason it is a person, you would put the Social Security number. For any other taxpayer tax entity, you would put an employer identification number. So do not put anything in identifying number that states that you've applied for an EIN. Either you have an EIN, or if it's a tax entity that does not have an EIN or a Social Security number, then you would put in a unique reference ID number, at least in Schedule A and Schedule B. So for the form itself, at the very top, you're most likely going to be entering an EIN or a Social Security number. And then the shareholder in person will actually have a Social Security number in that section. So in part one, we're going to be calculating the total net controlled foreign corporation tested income. And then in part two, we're going to calculate any global intangible low taxed income, also known as GILTI, that might be reported on your income tax return. So we'll complete lines 1 through 3, and then from part 1, we'll kind of outline what your next steps might look like. And again, this presumes you've already calculated, you've already completed either Schedule A or Schedule B, not both, and we're entering items from the respective lines and columns from those forms. So we'll just pretend that John Doe completed Schedule A, and these are numbers that he's reporting from Schedule A. So line 1 is the sum of the pro rata share of net tested income. So in other words, this would be the shareholder's prorated share of the total net tested income that was calculated in Schedule A. And then in line 2, this would be the sum of the pro rata share of the net tested loss. So in line 1, that number is going to come from Schedule A, line 1, column E. And then if you were completing Schedule B, it would be part 2, column C, with respect to that individual shareholder. For line 2, the Schedule A number is from line 1, column F. And then for line 3 of this part, we're simply going to subtract the difference, and we come up with $15,000 of net controlled foreign corporation tested income. Now we're going to use that information to calculate part 2. But if for some reason if the amount of on line 3 is 0 or negative, then you can stop right here. So basically, if your net CFC tested income is negative or 0, then you don't need to complete the rest of the form. You don't need to complete the rest of Schedule A because there are only certain portions of Schedule A that you have to complete in order to get the answers for Part 1, specifically columns A through F in Schedule A. Then if this amount is negative or 0, then you don't need to complete the rest of Schedule A. You don't need to complete Part 2. You would simply attach your completed Form 8992 and your Schedule A with your income tax return for the year. Since this is a positive number, we'll go ahead and calculate information in Part 2. So we're going to bring down this line 3 number into line 1 of Part 2. And then we're going to calculate what is known as the deemed tangible income return, or DITR. So for a shareholder who is not a part of a consolidated group, you simply multiply the amount from line 1, column G by 10%. So that amount, for all intents and purposes, we put down as $1,500. Now, if the U.S. shareholder is a member of a consolidated group, then you would enter the amount from Schedule B, Part 2, column I, with respect to that shareholder. In lines 3A and 3B, we're going to enter the pro rata share of tested interest expense, and then the pro rata share of tested interest income. So we're going to derive that information from the respective Schedule A. For the interest expense, that would be in column J, line 1, and then the interest income is in column I. So in this case, we have $2,000 of tested interest expense, and then $1,000, that's John Doe's pro rata share of the overall tested interest income. Now, if the shareholder was a member of a consolidated group, you would leave these two blank, and then you would fill in information in line 3C based on the instructions here. So since the shareholder is not a member of the consolidated group, we're going to simply subtract line 3B from line 3A. We've got $1,000. If the shareholder was a part of the consolidated group, then you would grab the number from Schedule B, Part 2, column M, specific to that shareholder. To arrive at net DTIR, we would subtract the line 3C number from line 2. That gives us $500. And then to arrive at GILTI, we're going to subtract line 4 from line 1. So line 1 was $25,000. We backed out this $500, and we've got $24,500. Now for an individual shareholder, you're going to take this line 5 amount and you'll put it under the appropriate other income line on Schedule 1 of your Form 1040, or the comparable line if you're completing a different tax return. For corporate shareholders, this will go on the appropriate line of your Form 1120, Schedule C. So that's all we have for this article. Check out our other videos that we have on completing Schedule A and Schedule B. As a reminder, you only need to do your calculations on one or the other, never both. And if you need more detail, please check out our article, which you can find at teachmepersonalfinance.com. Type in IRS Form 8992 in the search bar, and you'll see our article appear. You'll also, in the show notes, you'll see a link to that article, as well as links to articles we've written about other forms that we discuss. So if you like our articles, please subscribe to our newsletter. And if you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have any questions or comments, as always, please post them in the comments section, and I'll do my best to answer them. Thank you very much, and have a great day.